You live on the back of a dragon. Not a metaphor, not a poem. That is what your ancestors genuinely believed. If you are standing anywhere in Vietnam right now, from the mountains of Sapa to the rice paddies of the Mekong Delta, you are standing on the body of a sleeping dragon. A creature so ancient it predates every king, every dynasty, every written word your civilization ever produced. And this dragon is nothing like the one you have seen in movies. Most people hear dragon and picture the Chinese lung, a long, serpentine creature with 4 legs, a flaming pearl under its chin, and imperial authority dripping from every scale. But the Vietnamese dragon, the R letter 183NG, is a fundamentally different being. It came from a different place. It meant something different. And the real story of where it came from will change the way you think about mythology itself. Let's start where every good story starts, in the mud. 6,000 years ago, the Red River did not behave the way it behaves today. It was wild. It was violent. It flooded unpredictably, swallowing entire villages, reshaping the land overnight, pulling down houses and livestock and people into brown, churning water. The early communities along its banks, the people archaeologists now call the Dong San culture, had no levees, no dams, no weather forecasting. They had nothing between them and annihilation except hope. So they gave the river a shape. This is the part most people miss. The Vietnamese dragon did not begin as a symbol of power. It began as a symbol of water. Specifically, it began as an attempt to understand water, the force that gave life to every rice field and took it away in a single night. The R letter 183NG was not a monster to be slain. It was a presence to be respected. A being that controlled the rain, the rivers, the flooding that made Vietnam's agriculture possible. You did not fight the dragon, you asked it for mercy. And you can actually see this happening. In 1924, a French colonial administrator and amateur archaeologist named Louis Pajot began excavating ancient bronze drums in what is now northern Vietnam. These drums, later classified as Dong San drums, were covered in intricate carvings. Patterns of boats, of hunters, of geometric spirals, but also something else. Long, sinuous shapes with curved bodies, wide mouths, and flowing whiskers. These were some of the earliest known depictions of Vietnamese dragon-like creatures, and they were always surrounded by water imagery, waves, rain patterns, aquatic animals. The drums themselves told a story. They were ritual objects used in ceremonies to summon rain. When the dry season stretched too long and the rice paddies cracked under the sun, these drums were beaten. The dragons carved into their surface were not decorations. They were prayers cast in bronze. This is not speculation. The archaeologist Lair Van Lan, one of Vietnam's most respected historians and a professor at the Vietnam National University, has spent decades tracing the evolution of the dragon symbol through Vietnamese material culture. His work shows a clear pattern. The earliest dragon images are tied almost exclusively to water rituals, agricultural festivals, and river worship. Only much later, after centuries of Chinese political influence, did the dragon begin to absorb imperial connotations. But even then, the Vietnamese dragon kept its own identity. Here is where it gets interesting. The Chinese dragon was a creature of the sky. It flew above the clouds, commanded by emperors, a symbol of celestial authority. The Vietnamese dragon from its very first appearance was a creature of the earth and water. It lived in rivers. It coiled through mountains. It shaped the land itself. And that belief has a name, a very old one. El letter 1E1C Long Quan, the dragon lord of El letter 1E1C. According to the foundational myth of Vietnam, recorded centuries later in texts like the Linh Nam Chich Quai, a 14th century collection of supernatural tales, El letter 1E1C Long Quan was the son of a dragon king who ruled the seas. He married Ao Ko, a mountain fairy. Together they laid 100 eggs, and from those eggs were born 100 children. 50 went with their mother to the highlands. 50 went with their father to the coast. And from these children, the Vietnamese people descended. 100 eggs, 2 landscapes, 1 nation. This story is not just mythology. It is geography encoded as family. Vietnam is one of the most geographically divided countries in Southeast Asia, mountains in the north and west, a long coastal plain, and 2 enormous river deltas separated by hundreds of kilometers of narrow land. The myth of El letter 1E1C Long Quan and Ao Ko is a narrative map. It tells you in the language of blood and kinship that the mountain people and the coastal people are one family. That the dragon and the fairy, the water and the land must stay connected, or the nation falls apart. TR letter 1EA7N, QU letter 1ED1, CV letter 1B0, letter 1EE3, and G. One of Vietnam's most influential 20th century historians argued that this myth served a deeply practical political purpose. In a land constantly threatened by both floods and invasions, the story of a unified people born from both dragon and fairy was not just poetry. It was survival strategy. It told every village, every tribe, every ethnic group in the region, you belong to each other. But what about the dragon itself? What was it actually modeled on? This is where archaeology gets uncomfortable. In the 1980s and 1990s, researchers studying river sediment cores in the Red River Delta found evidence of a much richer aquatic ecosystem in ancient times than exists today. Among the bones recovered from prehistoric settlement layers were remains of Siamese crocodiles, a species that once inhabited the rivers and wetlands of northern Vietnam in significant numbers. These crocodiles could grow up to 4 meters long. They were powerful, semi-mythological presences in the water long before anyone carved them into bronze. Some scholars, including members of the Vietnam Institute of Archaeology, have proposed that early dragon imagery may have been partially inspired by encounters with these large river reptiles. The sinuous body, the wide jaw, the association with water and danger, the overlap is suggestive. The Siamese crocodile is now critically endangered and almost entirely gone from Vietnamese waterways. But 6,000 years ago, it was a real and terrifying presence in the same rivers where the first dragon drums were beaten. Of course, the dragon is not simply a crocodile. It is a composite, an imagination assembled from multiple sources: crocodiles, large catfish, water snakes, the visual patterns of river currents themselves. And layered on top of all of this is something deeper: the human need to give a face to the forces that control your survival. Here is what makes the Vietnamese dragon different from almost every other dragon tradition in the world. In European mythology, the dragon is an obstacle. It hoards gold. It terrorizes villages. A hero must kill it to prove his worth. In Chinese mythology, the dragon is an instrument of power. It serves the emperor. It commands the weather from above. In Vietnamese mythology, the dragon is you. It is your ancestor. It is the land beneath your feet. It is the river that feeds your rice. It is the rain that decides whether your family eats this year. You do not worship the dragon from a distance. You carry it in your blood. That is what the 100 eggs mean. That is what L letter 1EA1C long Quan means. The dragon did not come from somewhere else. The dragon is where you came from. And this belief shaped everything. The Lai dynasty, which ruled Vietnam from 1009 to 1225 CE, made the dragon its central imperial symbol. But even they adapted it. The Lai dragon was not the Chinese lung. It was thinner, more sinuous, often depicted with a single horn or with flowing mane-like features drawn from water buffalo imagery, another sacred animal in Vietnamese agricultural life. The dragon on Lai dynasty pillars, like those still standing at the Chua Dao Pagoda in B letter 1 EAFC Ninh province, looks like water in motion, like a river given a body. You can still see this today. During T letter 1 EBFT, the Lunar New Year celebration, dragon dances fill the streets of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. Long, twisting fabric dragons weave through crowds while drums beat, the same rhythmic pattern researchers believe that echoed from bronze drums 6,000 years ago. The dragon chases a flaming pearl, which represents the sun or rain or wisdom, depending on who you ask. But the energy of the dance is unmistakable. It is not about dominance. It is about awakening. Calling the dragon to move, to bring rain, to bring life. The dragon is sleeping beneath you, and the drums are asking it to wake up. Now here is the part that should unsettle you, at least a little. You carry myths inside your body that you did not choose. If you grew up in Vietnam, the dragon is not just a cultural symbol you can put on and take off. It is embedded in the way you think about the land, the water, the relationship between your family and the place you live. You may not literally believe that a dragon shaped your coastline, but when you see the S-shaped map of Vietnam, something in you recognizes it as alive, as having a spine, a body, a breath. That recognition is not accidental. It is the echo of a 6,000-year-old conversation between human beings and the river that would not stop flooding. A conversation that turned terror into reverence. That turned a crocodile into an ancestor. That turned mud into myth. Every civilization does this. It takes the thing that threatens to destroy it and gives it a name, a shape. A story, because a story you can tell is a story you can survive. The dragon was never really about dragons. It was about the only question that ever mattered in a river valley with no walls and no warning. Will the water come today?